Good afternoon and good evening. Welcome to the Zero Waste Asia Newsroom. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Sonia Astudillo, Senior Communications Officer for GAIA Asia Pacific, and here to provide you with the latest updates on the final day of the third Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee on Plastic Pollution taking place in Nairobi, Kenya. In the latest updates from the third Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee on Plastic Pollution, or INC-3, tackled the zero waste draft in three contact groups on treaty objectives and core obligations, means of implementation, and placeholder text such as the preamble, principles, and scope. However, challenges emerged as the Secretariat worked to synthesize and streamline the text, but ended up with significantly lengthier text in the range of hundreds of pages despite efforts to condense the zero draft. This complexity has complicated the negotiations with both civil society and member states struggling to follow the textual blowouts. Today, we will be speaking about some of the biggest challenges in the process so far, diving particularly into two important issues, intersessional work and trade provisions. At the same time, civil society organizations actively advocated for human rights, indigenous peoples' rights, and waste pickers' rights during the Indigenous Peoples INC caucus. This highlighted the deep impact of colonialism, capitalism, and plastic pollution on indigenous and waste pickers communities. In a related development, Breakfree from Plastic and GAIA launched the Smoke and Mirrors report, providing a critical analysis of plastic credits. Presenting us with additional updates and a summary of yesterday's events, we are joined by Apita Bhagat, the Plastic Policy Officer at GAIA Asia Pacific. Hi, Arpita.
Hi, Sonia. Hi, everyone.
So as we're close to the closure of INC-3, what were your favorite highlights and toughest moments for the week?
Yeah, I think it's very hard to answer this question because this week, while it's been a week, it feels like a long, long time, and memory is right now very, very breaky for most of us. But I think yesterday, for example, there were a lot of obstruction from countries with vested interest. And there was, it seemed like a concerted obstruction of contact groups to conclude their work. But meanwhile, we managed to do it. One particular country made a bold statement saying that, I cannot name the country, but they said that one country cannot hold hostage the progress of these negotiations, which we are all stakeholders of, something on those lines. I think that was the kind of powerful moment that we were all hoping for. And I can imagine today is going to be another round of some difficult moments and some powerful statements from countries who are fighting the strong fight. Contact Group 2, which was on means of implementation that I have been following closely, particularly proceeded reasonably peacefully as compared to the others. I don't think that that's a surprise, but at this juncture, when we are trying to compile all of the member positions and then going into a process of streamlining those, that means removing duplications. And today we will be going into what the chair has called validation. If folks were watching the plenary live, which went into a pause just about, I think, 30 minutes ago. So we will go into that process for Contact Group 2 and 3 now. But other than that, the Pacific Small Island Developing States, the African group in particular, have been standing strong. Also some states from Latin America, some countries in Asia Pacific, New Zealand, for example, have been fighting against these powerful countries which are trying to derail progress. And these countries are the same countries who are pushing for a downstream treaty, dilute and really go away from the resolution 5/14 that was agreed last year when we began to think about the process for these negotiations, and even attempts at not recognizing that plastics overproduction is the real issue that the treaty needs to address, given that this treaty's mandate is to address plastic pollution through the full life cycle, through a comprehensive approach across the full life cycle of plastic. Moreover, they don't want to accept the need for controls on chemicals and polymers of concern, stalling discussions even on the mandate for intersessional work, what would the modalities of it, and the priorities that would be taken forward. And therefore, there have also been informal attempts to grow this group of like-minded countries that was announced by Iran in the preparatory meeting on Saturday, if you were following it, calling themselves Global Coalition for Plastic Sustainability, where they named Russian Federation, Bahrain, China, Cuba, and many more, quote unquote, that we are privy to in this particular meeting, which was broadcasted on UNEP website live. And I think one thing to note is that we need to remember that these coalitions that are being formed are informal. They are not recognized by the UN system. They don't really have the authority to come out as such unless the UN system formally recognizes the GRULAC, the Africa Group, Asia Pacific, and so on. And so all of these new coalitions, alliances that are forming are really forming to kind of push either the treaty forward more strongly for a stronger control measures, and of course preventing overproduction, stopping the toxics and chemicals from continuing to pollute our environments and our health, and of course all of the other demands that the movement had, including just transition and so on. So a lot remains to be seen. There are countries who are trying to very deliberately drive down ambition. And I know BFFP released a press release regarding this particular announcement. So you're free to visit their website and look at it. Sonia, back to you.
So speaking of challenges, what obstacles do we face in realizing a robust treaty, especially considering the vested interests of the industry and oil-producing countries?
I feel like you've answered your core question in some regard, but there are so many challenges, and I feel like currently as we stand, and this is the last day, but we have no idea whether we will go away from this particular meeting with the mandate for the first draft and with the mandate for intersessional work, which has equitable participation, which has equitable access, and so on. So right now, the countries, like you said, the oil-producing petchem investors are trying to very strategically delay the progress of the actual negotiations to proceed, to ensure that they are pushing down sort of the ambition. They're calling for non-legally binding treaty. They're calling for a not top-down approach, which, as people understand, in multilateral sort of global agreements is the approach that is needed, because we have had the bottoms-up approach through the national legislation, which have focused primarily, at banning products or at waste management provisions and so on. We really need a top-down approach, which is the whole idea of having a global international agreement of this stage. So they're calling for broad convention, and broad convention essentially means that they're calling for something called as a framework convention. And if I could just take a second to explain what that means. There are two types of sort of multilateral agreements as they stand. There's a framework convention and there's a specific convention. And shout out to those of you who are interested to know more about how treaties function. We have a GPT track in our Zero Waste Academy Asia. So you are free to visit that, to look at the contents and sign up. Hopefully you'll hear more from me there. Sorry about the background noise if you can hear. There's an airplane right above me. But framework convention, or the broad convention that the countries are calling for, essentially have a standard structure, categories, and very broad provisions. And only a few, but not all of the control measures appear in one or more separate protocols in this model convention, and its protocols are legally very different things. And we saw it with the UNFCCC, which came out with the Kyoto Protocol, and then the real work actually began. So if you have a framework convention, then you have to further process and proceed and sort of come out with more of the smaller protocols, which will have some kind of control measures. So we really do not want to go in that direction. We really need specific control measures which are all agreed upon, which are legally binding, and which have the global mandate that a treaty of this stature requires. The other thing, they want voluntary approach. They want to focus more on national plans. as the main mechanism for implementation, for agreement. There is a repeated call to recognize the nationally determined circumstances, which we understand and which we support as far as financing and implementation is concerned for financing, but not in terms of sort of what should be the global controls that are required. They should be sort of universally agreed by the UN parties that ratify this particular agreement. They don't want any controls on production. They don't want any provisions to limit trade. And I know we'll talk a little bit more about that a little later. They also want to exclude provisions on polluter pays, even things like EPR, and how do we want a globally mandated EPR so that there is some universality in how it's applied, and there when it's applied, we also want just transition to be an important principle, not just for EPR but also to reflect across the text, as well as sort of recognition and sovereignty of indigenous peoples' rights and their demands. So a lot of this are very clear sort of attempts, and right now, I don't want to spread too much negativity. We still have the original zero draft text preserved. Of course, countries have said that they don't want particular provisions. So the alternatives that are there within a particular provision will reflect one option, one alternative option as no text. But at this stage in INC-3, no provision will be removed. So that's the good news. But that also means, like you rightly said, we will have more text than we came here with. And a lot will then depend on INC-4 on actually what stays and what doesn't say. And I think one of the key arguments that the countries are making who are opposing a progressive treaty is plastic polymers are not pollutants, or the problem is plastic pollution and not production, or things like plastic pollution arises from unsustainable management of plastic waste. And these are actual statements that I'm quoting here from what I've heard in the negotiations so far from some of the countries that do not want a progressive treaty. Sonia?
What about the countries resisting trade provisions in the Global Plastics Treaty? Why are they resisting it? And why are these provisions essential in the fight against plastic pollution?
Yeah, so I think this is an important and definitely an interesting question that I have realized the value of only in the last few days. So certain countries, including in Asia, said that the treaty shouldn't include trade provisions, and they've cited the World Trade Organization rules. They've cited multiple existing multilateral agreements. However, we should understand that trade provisions are essential for the success of the treaty and its implementation. And while I understand where it's coming from, right? There's fear that there will be economic impacts of controls on trade restrictions, really, and certain countries, and I think all of this is public knowledge from Iran on the behalf of Gulf Cooperation Council, India, Vietnam, and others. They are using the rationale of not trying to duplicate or sort of create more confusion with regards to international agreements and avoid conflicts and so on. But of course, we should know that these are basically tactics for them to protect their personal interest. And if I could quote from some of the lawyers that were discussing this yesterday, General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, GATT, which has an article on trade and plastics as well, but addressing trade measures in this plastics treaty would be essential, because essentially, while plastics is complicated, it's an issue of chemicals and sort of waste, but it's also an issue of material, which has not been addressed so far in any of the international agreements. It's important to understand that it's critical to harmonize all of these rules, and unless you do it, there will be disputes. So therefore, it is important to include it. Disputes actually sort of will appear only if they are fragmented, arbitrary, contradictory, discriminatory measures domestically, which could happen, and it's more likely to happen if the plastics treaty does not address trade in a comprehensive way. So moreover, we should know that the GATT that I just quoted has exceptions to the rules on non-restrictive restriction of trade. Environmental protection, unfortunately, is one of them. There are others. So the countries stating that trade in plastics cannot be restricted are actually factually wrong at this point. No trade measures under an MEA have been challenged at the WTO by a WTO member ever. The disputes there have arisen due to fragmented and incoherent at the international level trade measures. So this can be approached from the environmental perspective, and I'm glad to have this kind of legal expertise. And for more on this, you should refer to the CIEL website, that is CIEL, Center for International Environmental Law, from which we have gathered this information. Sonia, back to you.
Arpita, considering the importance of the mandate for the first draft, what are the potential consequences if there's no agreement for a first draft?
This is a very difficult question because, we put our heart and soul into this work. I joined this battle very recently, but, I am sort of growing and learning and sort of joining the battle of environmental anti-plastic zero waste activists, which have been fighting this fight for years and if not decades. So we know if we do not come out of this process with a mandate for the first draft, we are wasted our time, and a lot of time and a lot of resources, because technically if you count the preparatory meeting and the regional meeting, we've been here for 9 days. This is the 9th day that we are here. We go away from this meeting with hundreds of pages of document that would have legal sort of implications, that would have technical implications, that would require a lot of manpower that in the movement that we already do not have to sort of work on. And if we do not have this mandate for the first draft, Secretariat cannot proceed with their work. And a lot of onus will go in INC-4, which is in Canada, unfortunately. That also means that a lot of us in the AP region, in the Global South particularly, do not have the resources to go there, do not want to go there because the time it takes, the distance there is, and also the tedious visa process that one would imagine Canada takes, and we are all pretty aware of that. So access would be an issue. For me as the Asia Pacific sort of coordinator for this kind of momentous work, it will be difficult to see how I can enable members' participation and support them in a constructive way. Not just because we will have monumental amount of text to deal with, but also resources, access, and also sort of the manpower to kind of go there. Back to you, Sonia.
Okay, Arpita, it's 1:40 Kenya time. So what else are we expecting for the rest of the day? The next session doesn't start until 2 p.m. I just got a message.
Oh,
so
that's
we
great.
have time.
Because I have been worried that I'm losing time, and we have not had lunch yet, both Sonia and I, and I'm sure many others. So we had a plenary which was fairly short, I believe just about an hour, where the reports of contact groups were presented, and the links are available on UNEP side. I would request my team to also post those links in the chat that you're watching right now. Basically, there are some good things in those reports, but there are also difficult things to kind of accept, where countries has called for principles like sustainable development to be included, and try to include and emphasize circularity of plastics, which we know is a false narrative, because plastics, given they're essentially not sort of they're essentially chemicals, essentially polymers. There is no circularity. It's not like they're like oxygen, the air we breathe, or the sunlight, and as solar that we know that circulates forever. And of course, circularity also means that there is a propagation of toxics and the impacts that it involves for communities who are closely working on those value chains, the informal workers, waste pickers, informal recyclers, as well as the small and medium enterprises that are producing those, but also the frontline, the fence line communities who are living near landfills, who are living near dump sites, who are living and seeing the impacts of disproportionate impact of plastic pollution. So there is a lot at stake, but there is still hope. And I hope that tomorrow when we meet again, I have some good news for you all. My fingers, my toes are crossed, and I hope wherever you're watching this, you are with us, and your fingers, toes are also crossed. Please keep supporting the movement. Please keep amplifying the great work of GAIA, of BFFP, of CL, IPEN, and many others in the movement, because while we might be using different messages in different terms, we are in the same fight, and we are in the fight to transition to zero waste and away from the linear economy model that we are currently trapped in, and we are currently facing the consequences of. So with that, I wish you all a very good day, and I hope to have all of your strength and support for tonight. Is going to be a long night. Contact group 2 and 3 will resume, and hopefully 4 p.m. Kenya time we will have plenary, and hopefully plenary will end at a reasonable hour, so we are not up till wee hours of the night today. And we have the mandate for the first draft and intersessional work. So all of that and more. And thank you for watching this. Sonia.
Once again, thank you, Arpita, for joining us. So for a recap of the full week's event, do visit our social media pages. But as Arpita said, we'll do a full recap tomorrow at 8:30 Kenya time. So we'll see you, and thank you, everyone, and good evening and good afternoon. Bye.